and the jurisdiction over which they control, and begin to demand of them to implement their obligations under the law, and not necessarily stick our neck to those areas where there's combat and there is no cohesive governance that we can actually do. And in that area, I think that the African Union exists for the integration of African governance. And for that reason, I would recommend that at the next session of the Heads of State of Government of Africa, which we hold in January, I guess maybe in Addis, Nigeria needs to put up a strong request for a special session dedicated to the issue of Libya. That's one area they can go that is low-hanging fruit that they can easily pick up. And Nigeria is one of the 5 big countries, the 5 big as they call them, in the African Union. They must request for a special session to deliberate on the issue of Libya and come out with a recommendation that we bind that portion of the central Libya in Tripoli that seems to have recognition all over the world to begin to address in an appropriate manner the issues of migrants within their area of jurisdiction and assess them at the rights that they deserve. And I think that if Nigeria is strong, they can speak on behalf of the other Africans, because at the end of the day, it's not only Nigerians that are migrating to Libya, but Nigeria has the largest number, as 6,000, I believe, at the last count. Cameroon is there, Ghana is there, but they are in large numbers. So Nigeria must take the lead and request for a proper attention at the African Union level. At the international level also, I believe Nigeria can ask for a special session of the Human Rights Council and bring this up again, and Nigeria has a seat at the council, and bring this up again. So we need to begin to have international dialogue to compel compliance on these various rights. I would have said anyway that African Commission on Human and People's Rights exists, of which I was a chairperson, and I had the opportunity to actually issue some recommendations to Libya when Gaddafi was there, when several Nigerians were on death row and they were going to be killed, executed without due cause. And Gaddafi did put a halt on the execution. Of course, that was when there was a stabilized, but I'm just letting you know that these international mechanisms in intervention are able to help, and we can begin to explore those areas where there's pressure internationally on Libya to begin to address these issues. While home front, we begin to aggressively sensitize Nigerians of the need not to take that route anymore unless they really want to put their end to their lives. You know.
Well, I understand that my colleague Gimba has a question for you from Lagos.
All right.
One wonders that if these atrocities have continued, we understand, for the past decades, maybe spanning about 3 decades in Libya, and the African Union is only just coming now to say that they will try to get about 20,000 people, migrants, out of Libya at this time. If that report from that international media organization, CNN, never came to the fore, do you think that the AU would have been making efforts to try to resolve these issues of slavery in Libya?
Agimbia, I get your flow. And I do realize that there may be some laxity from the side of not just AU but the African nations whose citizens are victims of these abuses. And well, I think the point is now we all know, and in the last 30 years, I do not believe that the extent to which it is and the massive movement that Libya is experiencing right now is what it was then. It may have been in small numbers, but we know that in the last year or so, or 2 years or so, that's when we began to experience this very massive migration flow to Libya. And well, whether you want to apportion blame to the African Union, I believe they have acted now, and the point that needs to be made is for us to prevent the continuous flow or the continuous violations of human rights by Libya, of migrants.
Okay, now that we have this major problem on our hands, and some of the returnees have birthed here in Nigeria, and some of them have been taken to several centers, some in Edo State, some in the city center in Abuja, to try to see how they can be rehabilitated. NAPTIP is championing that cause to try to sift from the so many who came back and those that are being trafficked and take care of them. But when it comes to compensation, how would you say the dynamics should take shape? Because these people feel that their human rights have been trampled upon, and they feel that they have a sense of belonging and want to be compensated. What kind of compensation do you think that they can get?
From who? I think that's what we should answer. From Nigeria or from Libya? In line with the international law, it's the perpetrators that are obliged to compensate for any human rights violations. So in that wise, we'll be looking at Libya for compensation and not Nigeria. And so if we get that clear, that the migrants who are returning cannot turn to Nigeria and say, we need you to compensate us. Nigeria hasn't done anything in the context that the Nigerian did not lead you into, physically as it were, into Libya. So we'll be looking at what are the options that we have to ensure that Libya compensates these migrants. And like I was telling Mark a while ago, the challenge that we have for us not to be able to engage immediate international recourse is because Libya now is fragmented, and it's almost impossible to get a cohesive international intervention out of Libya. But I did say that there is a portion of Libya that is recognized centrally, internationally, so we deal with that unit, that entity of that portion of the Libya that has international recognition. And I would also say that we do that through the instrumentality of the AU to present these demands on Libya with regards to compensation. I think that would be the way I would suggest we go with regards to compensation.
Well, just as a wrap up now, what do you think, I mean, what more can we do in terms of sensitization? There is some awareness now, but do you also think that we need to be also looking for members of the cartel?
Well, Mark, if you get the cartel, what do you want to do with them? They don't reside in Nigeria. They are okay, the cartel in Nigeria or the cartel in
the cartel in Nigeria.
In Nigeria, well, okay, that's one effort. I guess we'll be fishing in the ocean because they are going to disappear very shortly. But if the migrants can lead Nigeria to the cartel, then they have questions to answer in Nigeria, and from there we can take it up and probably find some information as to how they lure these people into the journey that they undertake, and get the relevant information that will help us to prevent. And if we can investigate and find them culpable within the law, then they can equally be subjected to the recourse of the law at the end of the day. But I believe that knowledge of law is imperative to your enjoyment of such. And a lot of them are not aware of the real situation as against that glossy picture that was printed to them on their departure.
Well, we have to thank you most kindly for coming on Sunrise Daily and shedding a bit more light on this. Dr. Atoki is the former chairperson, African Union Commission on Human and People's Rights. The African Union Commission on Human and People's Rights is an AU organ responsible for the promotion of human rights in Africa. Well, Sunrise Daily will continue in just a moment. Please stay with us.